Imagine bleeding for 3 years. I mean, literally bleeding. Imagine busting your knuckles open on rusted engine blocks, working 12-hour days in a freezing garage, and draining your entire life savings just to keep your partner's failing business afloat. Imagine studying until your eyes crossed to get the highest certifications in your field, single-handedly saving the shop, and landing a multi-million-dollar government contract that sets you both up for life. Now, imagine that very next morning, your partner pulls up in a brand new $80,000 lifted truck bought with your hard work, hands you a minimum wage paycheck, and tells you he's demoting you to receptionist because, and I quote, "We need a prettier face at the desk now that we have big clients. You're just a grease monkey, babe. I'm the businessman." He thought he held all the cards. He thought because his name was on the building, he owned me. But my businessman boyfriend forgot to read the fine print on that multi-million-dollar contract, and he was about to learn a very expensive lesson about what happens when you try to fuck over the only master mechanic in the building. Welcome back to the Audacity of Him. If you've ever had a man take credit for your absolute back-breaking labor, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and settle in. Because this one is going to feel so good. My name is Olivia, and for 3 years I smelled like brake cleaner, stale coffee, and desperation. When I first met Lucas, he sold me a dream. He was handsome, charismatic, and had just inherited a run-down 3-bay auto repair shop on the industrial side of town from his uncle. Lucas had the gift of gab, but he didn't know a spark plug from a lug nut. I, on the other hand, had grown up in my dad's garage. I breathed engines. I understood the language of metal, torque, and combustion. We became a team. Or at least that's what he told me we were. We moved in together, and the division of labor was supposedly simple. Lucas would manage the front, handling the books, the marketing, and the customers. I would manage the back, actually fixing the cars. But within 3 months, the reality set in. The shop was drowning in debt. His uncle's reputation in town had been terrible, and the local part suppliers had us on strict cash-on-delivery terms. When payroll bounced for 2 of our junior techs, Lucas panicked. He was ready to declare bankruptcy. I refused to let us fail. I took the $20,000 I had saved for a house down payment, my entire safety net, and dumped it straight into the business account. "We're partners," I told myself. "His success is my success." From that day on, I didn't just work. I went to war. I was at the shop by 5:30 a.m. every single day, while Lucas rolled in around 9 o'clock a.m. with a pristine polo shirt and an iced coffee, taking long lunches to network. I was buried up to my elbows in transmissions. I did heavy line work, engine swaps, head gaskets, complex electrical diagnostics. I trained the junior techs, holding their hands through brake jobs and suspension rebuilds. The physical toll was massive. By year 2, I had chronic, agonizing pain in my L4 vertebrae from leaning over hoods for 12 hours a day. I had a permanent constellation of burn scars on my forearms from hot exhaust pipes. The industrial grease had worked its way so deeply into my calluses of my hands that no amount of pumice or gojo could scrub it out. My hands looked like the hands of an old man who had spent a lifetime in the coal mines. I was 28 years old. But I didn't just work with my hands. I worked with my brain. I knew that to get the high-paying corporate fleet accounts, we needed credentials. So at night, exhausted and aching, I studied. Over 18 months, I passed all 8 grueling exams to become an ASE certified master automobile technician. I even went the extra mile and got my L1 Advanced Engine Performance Specialist certification. When my heavy gold Master Tech patch arrived in the mail, I cried. It was the culmination of thousands of hours of blood and sweat. I sewed it onto my work shirt myself. Lucas glanced at it, patted me on the shoulder, and said, "Cool. Hey, do you think you can finish the Smith Subaru by 5? I promised them." I should have seen the red flags then. I should have noticed that while I was keeping the shop alive, his name was the only one on the LLC. But I was too tired and too blindly loyal to look up from the engine bays. By year 3, my relentless work had paid off. We had a flawless 5-star rating online. Local businesses knew if they brought a truck to us, it was fixed right the first time. We were finally turning a real profit. And then came the white whale, the city commercial fleet contract. The city was privatizing the maintenance for their entire municipal fleet, dozens of utility vans, water department trucks, and code enforcement vehicles. It was a guaranteed multi-year contract worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in guaranteed annual revenue. I spent 2 weeks drafting the technical specifications of our bid. I outlined our diagnostic capabilities, our turnaround times, and our preventative maintenance schedules. I poured every ounce of my technical expertise into that proposal. Lucas put a nice cover page on it, drove it down to City Hall, and shook the right hands. A month later, we got the call. We won the contract. I was ecstatic. I remember leaning against a tool chest, wiping tears of relief from my eyes with a greasy rag. I thought we had finally made it. I thought I could finally hire a lead tech, step back, and maybe let my spine heal. I thought Lucas and I were about to reap the rewards of our partnership. That evening, the local news station came down to do a human interest piece on a local small business winning a massive municipal contract. I was out back finishing up a grueling brake line replacement on a rusted-out pickup, covered in brake dust and grime. I figured Lucas would call me into the front office to do the interview together. After all, I was the head mechanic. I was the one who wrote the technical bid. He never called me. I walked into the waiting room just in time to see the cameraman packing up. Lucas was standing there in a crisp, new button-down, just beaming. I watched the segment live on the waiting room TV at 6:00 p.m. The reporter talked about Lucas's vision and his tireless dedication to the community. Lucas looked right into the camera and said, "I've worked my fingers to the bone to build this shop from the ground up. It's all about leadership and knowing how to run a tight ship." Not once did he mention his team. Not once did he mention me. I felt a cold pit form in my stomach, but I swallowed it. He's just doing PR, I told myself. He's the face of the company. I had no idea how literal he meant that. The very next morning, the audacity of this man slapped me squarely in the face. I arrived at the shop at my usual 5:30 a.m. to prep the bays. At 8:00 a.m., the shop doors rattled. I expected to see Lucas's sensible sedan. Instead, the sun blocked out as a massive brand new midnight black lifted King Ranch pickup truck roared into the parking lot. It had custom rims, oversized tires, and an $80,000 sticker price written all over it. Lucas hopped out wearing designer sunglasses, looking like he had just won the lottery. "What is that?" I asked, wiping my hands on a shop towel, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Company vehicle," he grinned, tossing the keys in the air. "The first deposit from the city hit the account this morning. Figured the CEO needs to look the part when I go to meetings." He bought an $80,000 pavement princess before giving the techs a raise, before paying me back my $20,000. Before investing in the new vehicle lift we desperately needed. "Lucas," I said, my voice dangerously low. We need to talk. Now. I followed him into his office. He sat down behind his mahogany desk, the one I had paid for during our first year, and kicked his boots up. Listen, Olivia, he started, cutting me off before I could speak. I'm glad you're here. We need to make some operational changes now that we're playing in the big leagues. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out two things. One was a cheap plastic name tag that said, Olivia, Reception. The other was a perfectly crisp envelope. He slid them across the desk toward me. What is this? I asked, staring at the plastic tag like it was a venomous snake. We've got city officials and corporate clients coming in now, Lucas said, using his best patronizing corporate speak voice. We can't have them walking into the front office and seeing someone covered in grease with dirt under their fingernails ringing them up. It's a bad look. I need you to wash up, put on some nice clothes, and man the front desk full time. I hired a new guy to take over your heavy line work. I was paralyzed. I physically could not comprehend the words coming out of his mouth. You're moving me to reception? I am a master ASE certified mechanic. I built this shop's reputation. I wrote the bid that got you this damn contract. Lucas sighed, a heavily exaggerated, put-upon sigh, like he was dealing with a toddler. Olivia, don't be dramatic. I manage the client acquisition. You just turn the wrenches. We need a prettier face at the desk now that we have big clients. Let's be honest. He gestured vaguely at my stained uniform, my unstyled hair, my calloused hands. You're just a grease monkey, babe. I'm the businessman. Let me handle the optics. My vision actually blurred. A grease monkey. A prettier face. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope he had slid me across the desk. It was my paycheck. For the past 3 years, I had taken a meager draw, leaving the profits in the business to help it grow. I expected that today, finally, my check would reflect my worth and my back pay. It was a check for exactly minimum wage. I looked up at him. This is minimum wage. Well, yeah, he chuckled, leaning back and lacing his fingers together. Receptionists don't get mechanic pay. But hey, as my girlfriend, you get to ride shotgun in the new truck. So it all balances out, right? I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't flip his mahogany desk, even though my chronic back pain flared up just thinking about it. I just stared at him. I looked at this man who didn't even know how to change a transmission fluid filter. A man who couldn't identify a catalytic converter if it dropped on his foot. A man who had taken my money, my health, my youth, and my expertise, and used it to buy himself an $80,000 ego boost while telling me to go be pretty and answer the phones. Okay, Lucas, I whispered softly. I dropped the plastic name tag in the trash can next to his desk. I understand perfectly. I walked out of his office. I didn't go to the reception desk. I walked straight into the employee break room, locked the door, and pulled up my email on my phone. I went to my sent folder. I scrolled back to the massive PDF file I had sent him 2 months ago, the final bid package for the city contract, the one I had written and he had submitted without reading the technical jargon. I scrolled down to Section 4, Subsection C, Liability and Warranty Preservation. There it was, the clause the city required for all outsourced fleet maintenance. I zoomed in on the text. The contract facility must maintain a minimum of 1 on-site automotive technician holding a current and valid ASE Master Automobile Technician certification. Failure to maintain this certified staff will result in the immediate voiding of this contract and forfeiture of all future payments, effective immediately upon discovery. The city had millions of dollars of vehicles under manufacturer warranty. They legally could not let uncertified mechanics touch them, or the warranties would be voided. Lucas wasn't certified in anything except narcissism. The 2 junior techs had basic brake and suspension certs. The new guy Lucas had just hired to replace me was a high school dropout who barely knew how to do an oil change. I was the only master tech in the building. I was the linchpin holding his entire multi-million-dollar empire together. And he had just demoted me to minimum wage and called me a grease monkey. A slow, cold, beautiful smile spread across my face. I waited until Sunday. The shop was closed. Lucas was out on the golf course networking and showing off his new lifted truck to his country club buddies. I drove my beat-up flatbed tow truck, a relic I had bought from a junkyard and restored myself, to the shop. I let myself in. I didn't touch anything that belonged to the business. I didn't have to. Mechanics buy their own tools. Over the last 10 years, I had meticulously built up a collection of Snap-on and Mac tools, torque wrenches, pneumatic impacts, specialty diagnostic scanners, master socket sets, $15,000 worth of high-end, professional-grade steel, housed in a massive rolling red Snap-on tool chest. It took me 2 hours to winch my massive tool chest up onto my flatbed, strap it down securely, and lock it. I gathered my coveralls, my protective gear, and my framed Master ASE certificate from the wall. I left the shop completely bare of any tool capable of doing more than changing a wiper blade. On Lucas's pristine mahogany desk, I left my shop keys, the minimum wage check, and a sticky note that just said, "The grease monkey quits." Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp, I didn't go to the shop. I went to a local diner, ordered a massive stack of pancakes, poured a cup of coffee, and pulled out my laptop. I registered a new LLC, Apex Mobile Fleet Services. Then, at 8:30 a.m., I made a phone call. I called Marcus, the city fleet manager. Over the past 3 years, Marcus and I had talked on the phone dozens of times. He knew I was the one turning the wrenches. He knew I was the one diagnosing the complicated diesel faults. "Hey, Marcus, it's Olivia," I said when he answered. "Olivia! Hey, congratulations on the contract," Marcus boomed. "We're bringing in 3 F-250s for heavy servicing this morning." "About that, Marcus," I said, taking a calm sip of my coffee, "I need to inform you of a change in personnel. I am no longer employed at Lucas's Auto. I resigned yesterday." There was a heavy pause on the line. "Wait, what? Olivia, you're the head tech. You're the master." "I am," I replied. "And I wanted to give you a professional heads up, strictly as a courtesy. As of this morning, Lucas's Auto no longer employs a master ASE technician. I believe that puts him in violation of Section 4, subsection C of the municipal contract." I could practically hear the blood pressure spiking in Marcus's head. The city does not play around with liability. "Are you absolutely sure, Olivia?" he asked, his voice dead serious. "I'm positive. He has a couple of entry-level lube techs, and that's it." I paused, letting the silence hang before delivering the killing blow. "However, Marcus, I just opened my own mobile fleet service. Fully insured, fully certified. If you ever need overflow work from a master tech who actually knows your vehicles, you have my number." "I'll call you back in an hour," Marcus said, and hung up. It took exactly 2 hours for the city to send an inspector, realize Lucas was committing contract fraud, and pull the plug on his entire operation. They handed me an emergency vendor contract that same afternoon. But I wasn't finished. Lucas had my blood, my sweat, and my $20,000, and I wanted my money back. A month later, my new mobile business was absolutely booming. I had hired 2 solid techs to keep up with the city work. Lucas's shop, meanwhile, was bleeding out. Without the city contract, and without me there to actually fix the cars, word spread fast. Part suppliers called in his lines of credit. That's when I dropped the anvil. I formally served him with a civil suit for breach of verbal contract, demanding the return of my $20,000 investment plus unpaid overtime wages. I had bank transfer receipts, email chains, and text messages to back up every single penny. Lucas decided to confront me about it, but because he's a narcissist, he didn't do it over the telephone. He tracked me down at Smith's Diner during the Friday lunch rush. Smith's was the unofficial headquarters for every blue-collar worker in town. It was packed elbow to elbow with local plumbers, electricians, parts delivery guys, and other mechanics. I was sitting in a booth in my crisp, clean Apex Mobile Fleet Services uniform, reviewing invoices, when Lucas stormed through the double doors. He looked terrible. The designer polo was wrinkled, and he hadn't shaved in days. He marched right up to my table and slammed the legal summons down, rattling my coffee cup. "Are you out of your mind?" he screamed, his voice echoing off the tile walls. The entire diner went silent. Forks paused midair. "You steal my city contract, you gut my staff, and now you're suing me? After everything I did for you, you ungrateful bitch!" Every head in the room turned toward us. He was posturing, chest puffed out, expecting me to cower because he was making a scene. Instead, I took a slow drink of my coffee, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. In a silent room, a razor-sharp whisper cuts deeper than a scream. "What you did for me?" I asked, my voice carrying to every corner of the diner. "Let's talk about what you did, Lucas, because there are a lot of business owners in this room who might be curious." Lucas blinked, momentarily thrown off by my total lack of panic. "I took 20 grand of my own money to save your bankrupt shop," I said, stepping out of the booth, closing the distance between us. "I worked 12-hour days breathing brake dust while you took 3-hour lunches on my dime. I got my master ASE certifications. I wrote the technical bid that won you the city contract." "It's my shop! My name is on the door!" he sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. "And yet," I shot back, taking another step forward, forcing him to physically back up. "You don't know the firing order of a standard V8. You don't know the difference between a rotor and a caliper. When that first city check cleared, you didn't pay back the money I loaned you. No, you bought yourself an $80,000 pavement princess truck, handed me a minimum wage paycheck, and told me to go be a pretty face at the reception desk." A collective murmur rippled through the diner. The guy from the local auto parts supplier, a man Lucas owed thousands to, was sitting 2 tables away, glaring daggers at him. "You didn't lose that contract because I stole it, Lucas," I said, my voice dripping with absolute venom. "You lost it because you tried to defraud the city of millions by passing off uncertified lube techs as master mechanics. You breached our contract. So yes, I'm suing you. I'm taking back the 20 grand I bled for, and I'm going to drain whatever is left in your accounts before the bank takes the rest of your pathetic empty shell of a business." Lucas opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked around the diner. He saw the disgusted faces of the local contractors, the suppliers, the peers he had spent 3 years trying to impress. In 60 seconds, I had stripped away his entire facade. They all knew he was a fraud. He grabbed the summons off the table, turned on his heel, and practically ran out the door. The diner erupted into laughter and scattered applause as the door slammed shut behind him. The lawsuit proceeded unopposed because Lucas simply couldn't afford a lawyer to fight my mountain of evidence. 2 months later, I was driving my new, heavily reinforced mobile mechanic rig past Lucas's shop. There was a for sale sign on the front window. But the absolute cherry on top? As I drove by, I saw a heavy-duty repo truck backing up to that pristine midnight black lifted King Ranch pickup. Lucas was standing in the parking lot in his wrinkled polo shirt, waving his arms, screaming at the repo guy, his face red and sweating. I rolled my window down just a crack, letting the rumble of my own engine harmonize with the beautiful sound of his truck being dragged away. I tapped my grease-stained fingers on the steering wheel, my chronic back pain somehow feeling a whole lot better. He wanted a prettier face for his business, and in the end, he got exactly what he asked for: an empty desk and a beautifully executed lesson in respect. And that, my friends, is why you never, ever disrespect the person holding the wrench. Olivia didn't just take her power back. She took his ego, his reputation, and his entire livelihood legally, cleanly, and with absolute precision. That is the definition of a mastermind. If you loved seeing Lucas get publicly dismantled in that diner as much as I did, do me a favor and smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story of satisfying, well-deserved revenge. Have you ever had to deal with a boss or partner who took credit for your hard work? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one of them. Until next time, keep your standards high, know your worth, and never let anyone treat you like a stepping stone. Thanks for tuning in to the Audacity of Him. I'll see you in the next video.